Westwood One presents Roger Waters, Off the Record with Mary Turner.
Dark Side of the Moon was a format, was the discovery of a format, really. It's a format within which I've been working ever since. It's a format that I'm comfortable with, you know. I like the idea of an album being about one specific thing and all the songs within it relating back to a central theme or idea.
Sounds like a very simple blueprint for success. Pick one theme and write an album around it. Dark Side of the Moon, Wish You Were Here, Animals, The Wall, The Final Cut, and the pros and cons of hitchhiking. It obviously works for Roger Waters, but it's safe to say it's a lot more complicated than it sounds. I'm Mary Turner, and for the next hour I'll be talking with Roger about how these concepts turn into gold. It's part 2 of the musical past, present, and future of Roger Waters, Off the Record. When punk rock came along around 76 here in England, Johnny Rotten was appearing quite a lot in a t-shirt that said, "I hate Pink Floyd."
Was he?
What was your reaction to that, or did you not even know?
I didn't notice that.
How do you feel about punk in general anyway?
It depends whether you're talking about the music, of the Sex Pistols, which was absolute load of rubbish. I'm completely disinterested in that. What they were saying was, look, we're teenagers now, or we're young now, and we can have our primal scream even though we can't play any instruments or anything. I acknowledge the fact that it was difficult for that generation, coming up after what I look upon as my generation, because my generation, when we started in rock and roll, nobody could play anything except people in dance bands. Until Eric Clapton learned to play the guitar, nobody could play the guitar. But, well, Chuck Berry, and, i.e. It was only black music in America. They were the only people who could play anything, So we were kind of lucky enough in the 60s to be growing up when it was all right not to be able to play your instruments because no one could. And we all learnt together in a way. So I can understand the frustration, of all these old fogies being rather good at it because we got bloody good at it. So the punk thing, I think, was terrific as... if it was wandering up and down the King's Road, with your hair dyed a funny colour, and all that kind of posing is a very necessary part of growing up, I think. Whether it's that or, a T-shirt with your cigarettes rolled up in it over your developing biceps.
Hopefully.
It does, hopefully, yeah. It doesn't really matter what it is, but I think it's nice to have people to have a thing that they can feel safe in. Which necessarily, if it's to be of much use to you as you're growing up, needs to appear to be dangerous to your parents. If it doesn't seem dangerous to them, then it's not working properly. That's part of the deal.
After Dark Side of the Moon, your role seemed to increase more and more. I think many people assume that you were speaking for Pink Floyd. Were you, or were you really sort of getting into doing solo albums with it almost seems to me like Dark Side of the Moon and The Wall could have been solo albums like the pros and cons.
Yeah, well, I don't think Dark Side of the Moon could. There's an awful lot of musical input from other people on Dark Side of the Moon, and on Wish You Were Here as well, but certainly the later The Wall, certainly. In fact, I think, didn't I explain to you before that when I'd made the demos, I made on my own, I made just working on a multi-track tape recorder on my own, I made demos of The Wall and the pros and cons of hitchhiking. And then I wrote all the lyrics out in books, sets of books, and then I went in to the rest of the guys in the band, and played them the 2 tapes with books of words for them to follow. And at the end of that meeting, or at the end of that listening, I then said, right, I'm going to do one of these as a solo project, and I'm going to do one of them with a band. Which one do you want to do? And they chose The Wall. Clever boys.
Very clever boys. The Wall, you could say, is pretty much autobiographical.
Yeah.
Is writing a sort of therapy for you?
Probably.
Is that how you get out your angers, frustrations, fears, and what other emotions are lurking in you?
Partly, yeah. I do it in real life as well. It's not like I'm this sort of strange, quiet person who can't express himself in any other way than by, writing songs or doing shows. As anybody who's ever, worked with me will tell you, I'm quite good at getting my anger out.
Did you write The Wall with the idea of doing the film from the beginning, or was that something that grew out of the album?
No, that was always there. It was always meant to be an album first, and then a show, and then a movie.
You had done quite a lot of work on other movies, soundtrack-wise, haven't you?
Well, we've done 3 or 4 films.
How'd you meet Antonioni?
Antonioni heard Careful That Axe Eugene and put it on his rough cutting copy of Zabriskie Point, I think for the ending, and liked it so much that he approached us to do a score for the film, which we did. We went to Rome and spent a fortnight there. And I think we did about 45 minutes of music, of which he used about 10 minutes in the end. But we did a whole score.
You did the music of the explosion
Yeah.
parts.
Yeah, well, we did music for all of it. But as I say, he didn't use very much of it. I used to take him we worked all night. We used to start work at 9 o'clock at night and work till 9 o'clock in the morning. And then I would go to bed and then get up in the afternoon, and I would take whatever we'd done to the cutting rooms in a taxi and play it to him. And he would sit there and listen to it, and he would go, "Roger, it's beautiful, I love it, but it's too sad." You know, there was always something wrong with it. It's a little bit too sad.
Over the past 2 years, Pink Floyd released an album called The Final Cut, 2 band members released solo albums, and 1 member, Rick Wright, released himself from the band. That's enough to make even the most optimistic Floyd fan wonder about the group's future. Will Nick Mason, David Gilmour, and Roger Waters continue as a trio? Waters has the answer next, Off the Record. On The Final Cut, you dedicate it to, it's a requiem for the post-war dream.
Yeah.
What is that post-war dream?
Well, I think the post-war dream was the dream that was the war to end all wars, and that we were going to learn a whole load of stuff from it. And there was a feeling that we were going to build a kinder world out of the rubble. And I don't think we have. And so The Final Cut, I suppose, ended up as being an expression of my concern that I and my generation, our generation, have betrayed the sacrifice of the dead from the Second World War, one of whom was my father. So, I don't know, it was a convoluted personal thing for me.
You didn't ever know your dad, did you?
No.
It's been a terrible void in your life.
Yeah.
Because it appears quite a lot, references to that appear quite a lot in your music.
They do. He had been a conscientious objector at the beginning of the war on the grounds that he was Christian and wouldn't kill anybody. And it was while he was working tearing down bomb buildings in 1940, I think, or 41, that he started to talk to other people who were involved in voluntary service in that way, and became politically motivated and became politically active, and joined the CP, and then had a big battle between, his Christianity and his politics, and in the end the politics won, and he decided that it absolutely in these circumstances was necessary to go and fight. So he rang up the board, or went to see the conscription people, whoever they were, and said, "I've changed my mind." They said, "Oh, jolly good, you can be an officer in the infantry." So it's so in a way he's sort of even more of a problem for me than if he had just been conscripted in the army and killed in the war, because there's something wildly heroic about that story, about changing your ideals and then going out and being killed for them. So that's a real kind of burden that I've had to bear.
Pink Floyd fans, many of them, saw that title and the departure of Rick Wright as meaning that's the end of Pink Floyd, is it?
Who knows? So many bands over the years have said, "That's it, it's all over," and 10 years later, they creep back together again. So that might happen, but for the present, yeah.
Eric Clapton, Ray Cooper, Andy Bown, Michael Kamen, Andy Newmark, and David Sanborn. Sounds like someone's dream band, which makes it the perfect band to illustrate a dream. That's how it all worked for Roger Waters. The dream became his solo album, The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking. The dream band became his all-star backup band. In a moment, we'll hear what happens when Waters puts the dream on the road, off the record. The Pros and Cons of Hitchhiking will not be the longest tour in the history of rock and roll, but like all of the Pink Floyd shows, it will be one of the most inventive. Roger Waters only planned a month of shows for Europe, and his solo tour of America will be even smaller. Are you anxious to get back on the road? Do you miss touring?
No, I don't miss touring at all. The last tour we did was in 1977, was the Animals tour, and I absolutely loathed it. That's fairly well documented now. I really hated it. We were playing big stadiums, and it was horrible.
I must say, though, from the audience standpoint, because I saw that show at Anaheim Stadium, it was great. It really was.
Good. Well, that's good. I'm glad it was, but I didn't like doing it. What I disliked about it was that when you're playing in a stadium and there are sort of 80,000 people there, maybe I'm just paranoid, but I got very involved with the fact that 30,000 of them were pissed out of their brains, rolling around the place, hitting each other, shouting and screaming, smashing stuff up. And maybe the other 50,000 were all wanting to be involved, or even were. Maybe they accept that, the price that you pay for being in an enormous mob like that. And also the fact that some of the people are so far away, it's very difficult to reach people with the feelings that are coming off the stage. And my experience of it was, from where I was that not enough real human contact was being made with the audience to satisfy me, And so I swore there and then that I would never play a big stadium again.
On this tour, you'll actually be doing Pink Floyd songs as well as the entire Pros and Cons album.
The first half of the show that I'm doing. Clearly, the Pros and Cons is only the second half of a show. The show will be 2 hours, I guess, an hour and then a break. And so the first hour, I'm doing a selection of my songs from, I think the earliest ones from 1968. Suffice it to say that some of them there is animated material and stuff that was used in the Dark Side of the Moon show and the Wish You Were Here show and those earlier shows of ours, which Dave and Nick, bless them, have been kind enough to agree that I can use. At the moment, I'm absolutely livid with some of the record companies in Europe, because that's just because they're taking absolutely no notice of me at all. I get the feeling that they'd really, what they'd really like me to do is fail dismally and creep back to mummy, and start making Pink Floyd albums.
You're kidding.
So that, then they have no work to do, really. Pink Floyd album comes out, at least it's going to get noticed. If an album's got Pink Floyd written on it, at least, even if people don't in the end up buying it in millions, at least they're going to take some notice of it when it comes out. The record company doesn't have to promote it, really. And this album is obviously much harder work for them. And on the continent, in Germany and France and places, they couldn't be less interested in it.
I'm shocked, I really am.
CBS, on the other hand, I'm happy to say, are taking it all very seriously, and we're in closer communication, in fact, than we have been before.
Did you anticipate problems of this nature, or is it coming as a surprise to you?
No, it's okay. The EMI thing in Europe has come as a terrible shock. Also, it's not just the record company as well. It's too early to talk about whether people like the album or don't, or whether they'll buy it or won't buy it. But concert tickets in Europe have been unbelievably hard to sell. And I had made the completely rash and wrong assumption that people who'd been to Floyd shows knew that it was me who'd made them and who did it all, because it's written all over the program. Written and directed by me, But they obviously haven't made that connection, because there is no wild stampede to buy these tickets for my show. And that may just be a breakdown in our advertising over here. But there's certainly a huge gap in communicating the fact that my Pros and Cons show is a Floyd show, except Eric Clapton's playing the guitar and Andy Newmark's playing the drums instead of Dave Gilmour and Nick Mason. But everything else is the same. Same team doing it, same guys building the sets, same sound system.
Obviously, on a business level, that must be kind of hurtful.
Yes, I mean, I've always maintained a very low profile, and I've obviously done it even more effectively than I had realized, and I'm now paying the price. I'm paying the price for all that nice privacy. I just hope that I don't have to pay the price for all this promotion later on. I don't know what's worse. Actually, I do know what's worse. I'm quite, to take this show out on the road and sit looking at empty halls would be horrible because I'd put so much work into it, and it's great. And the sick thing would be that 3 or 4 months later or 6 months later, people would be going, God, I wish I'd gone and seen that, Anyway, that's enough whining about all that.